Maybe I better start again. Sorry. So I just heard that the public recording just started, so I'll start again. Thank you for joining us for our public information number 2 on our community improvement project. The town has retained the services of Dillon Consulting to help the town in the development of a community improvement plan. And I'm going to turn the meeting now over to Dillon Consulting and Amy Greenberg in particular, who will introduce the members of her team that are here with us this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Hi, everybody. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to hear us speak today about the community improvement plan for the town of Carleton Place. So today it's the second Public Information Center. We also call it a PIC. So I'm just going to go to the slide talking about the agenda. So today I'm going to give you a brief background on how we got here today. So I'll go through it somewhat quickly just to be able to get to the meat of the actual presentation, which is the draft CIP itself. And then there will be opportunities for questions along the way. So to begin with, thanks to Diane. We are working with Carleton Place to prepare this community improvement plan. I am here today as well with Ron Shishido, a partner and planner at Dillon Consulting as well, who will be here to answer questions as needed. So to begin, the purpose of this project was to create an incentive-based suite of programs referred to as a community improvement plan, also known as a CIP, which encourages investment in the revitalization of your community. It's a tool that allows the town to direct funds to specific areas or initiatives in need of increased funding, attention, or both. So to accompany the CIP is a streetscape improvement plan, and this is a strategy to improve and beautify your public right-of-way, which is the space between the buildings and open spaces. Finally, to supplement the CIP and streetscape improvement plan, we've also prepared what's called a municipal leadership strategy, and this will prioritize municipally led projects, programs, and tools to enhance the town's infrastructure, streetscapes, and public areas that will fall within the CIP boundary either fully or partially. Municipal investments of the municipal leadership strategy will help to activate and encourage private sector participation in the CIP's various incentive programs. So to begin, the focus areas for the CIP, which I'll explain in further detail in the next few slides, are brownfield redevelopment, revitalization, which includes facade improvement, streetscape improvement and accessibility, and affordable housing. So the first focus area is brownfield redevelopment, where a brownfield property is one that was previously developed and is vacant, and it may be contaminated. So redeveloping a brownfield would require assessing the property and remediating it to get it ready for construction. So the second focused area is facade improvement, where a facade is the face of the building. While the town currently has a downtown facade improvement program in place, the CIP builds off its good momentum. The third focus area is streetscape improvement, where again, the streetscape is what lies in the area between the buildings. The fourth focus area is accessibility, which is the barrier-free design that focuses on making new and existing buildings safe and accessible for everybody, regardless of ability, age, or stature. Some examples of accessible features include permanent ramps, step-free access to building entrances, automatic door openers, hand railings, and accessible building signage. So the fifth and final focus area is affordable housing, where affordable housing costs less than 30% of a household's before tax income, excluding utilities, and this is according to Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Objectives of this focus area is to support development projects that increase the supply of affordable housing, as well as provide a greater range and mix of affordable housing types that would help residents to age in place. So the CIP will aid members of your community in accessing funding in these 5 key areas that I just discussed, and it will also support investment in the town and its businesses, heritage buildings, and housing options. So with respect to timeline, we began this project in the winter in November, and that's when we began doing this background research to essentially get us to where we are today, which is having drafted the CIP based on public engagement and such. So on that note, We reviewed the town's policies and bylaws. We reviewed existing CIPs of other municipalities that had similar focus areas to this one. We interviewed stakeholders that the town had recommended to ask them questions on these focus areas. And we also engaged the public. We did some polling questions during that first public information center. And we also posted those polling questions as an online survey and used that to build the CIP. So things that we had heard through engagement was with respect to the eligibility boundaries and target and property areas for the various focus areas. We learned what type of streetscape improvements you would like us to prioritize, as well as those accessibility improvements to prioritize. And we also got a better sense of who could be in greater core housing need or who are underhoused. So there are 2 community improvement project areas for this CIP. The first one is town-wide, and this applies to financial incentive programs for brownfield redevelopment, accessibility, and affordable housing. And then there is a second eligibility boundary as well. It's essentially the downtown district from Lake Avenue to the Mississippi River, and this encompasses incentive programs for facade improvements. So before we carry on with the rest of the presentation, does anybody have any questions on the first leg with respect to the project purpose, how we created the CIP, as well as the eligibility boundaries? I hear none, so I will carry on. I will continue. So the next leg is your participation. We have some questions with respect to the proposed financial incentive programs and eligibility criteria. We have information on the Conceptual Streetscape Improvement Plan, the Municipal Leadership Strategy, and ways to implement and fund your CIP. And then it'll follow with a question and answer period. So again, the financial incentive programs that are applicable town-wide are brownfield redevelopment, accessibility, and affordable housing. So I'll go into a bit more detail into each of those. So to begin, we'll talk about brownfield redevelopment and the proposed financial incentive programs. We have 4 proposed incentive programs, that being an environmental site assessment grant, a tax increment equivalent rebate, building permit fees grant, and a development charge deferral program. So the first 2 on the screen is the environmental site assessment grant and the brownfield tax increment equivalent grant. So the first being the environmental site assessment grant would be $25,000 per study, or 50% of the cost of the environmental site assessment, whichever is less of the 2. And there would be a maximum of 2 studies per property up to a value of $40,000. And for this to be triggered, you need the requirement of a phase 2 ESA as declared by a professional engineer. The second one is the tax increment equivalent rebate, where up to 50% of the municipal portion of the incremental tax increase or total remediation costs will be covered, whichever is less, over 10 years. So those are those 2. Then the next 2 is building permit fees grant, where 50% of building permit fees up to the cost of remediation is accounted for, and a maximum grant is $50,000. The fourth is the development charge deferral program, where there is a deferral of up to 50% of the development charge for a period of up to 18 months without interest. That is subject to a deferral agreement. With respect to costs that are eligible, they include the assessment of the property, its remediation, as well as risk management. But in terms of what is not eligible, that includes construction materials and labor, management of the project, as well as purchasing of equipment. So next, I'd like to quickly go over the accessibility financial incentives. Note there are 2 proposed incentive programs, one for exterior accessibility improvements and the other is for interior accessibility improvements. So they are both presented on the screen, the first being the exterior accessibility improvement program, where up to 50% of the cost of eligible exterior accessibility improvements to a building are covered to a maximum of $5,000. And that is those who are eligible for exterior accessibility improvements like installing wheelchair ramps and new automatic powered doors, exterior accessibility improvements that satisfy the design criteria outlined in the CIP. And it needs to comply with Accessibility of Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or AODA, as well as the Ontario Building Code. Interior accessibility improvement for that program is a similar thing, up to 50% of the cost of eligible interior accessibility improvements, which may include renovating one or more bathrooms to be fully accessible, or installing stair lifts, or installing elevators. And again, it needs to comply with AODA and the Ontario Building Code. And now I'll go into the eligibility area for affordable housing financial incentives. I want to point out, I see your hand, Andrew. So I'm just going to finish running through the ones that are applicable townwide, and then. Right, so for affordable housing, we have 5 proposed incentive programs: development charge rebate program, building permit fee rebate, an accessory unit grant, a tax increment equivalent rebate, and a housing and accessibility co-application. So the first being the development charge rebate. This would allow up to 100% of development charges associated with new affordable rental units, calculated based on the proportion of affordable units. So for example, if a 10 unit building is providing 5 affordable units, 50% of the development charges would be eligible for rebate. The second program is the building permit fee rebate, where up to 100% of building permit fees associated with new affordable rental units could be covered, calculated based on the proportion of affordable units, same as the last example, where again, if you provide 10 units in a building and 5 of them are affordable, you would get 50% of your building permit fees covered. The affordable housing accessory unit grant is one where you add a legal accessory unit to a building, and you can get up to 2 grants, the first being a maximum of $5,000 towards certain required professional studies or drawings. And if you had received grant 1, you would get grant 2, which is an additional $2,000 if you had invested more than $30,000 to set up this new legal accessory unit. And the last 2, tax increment equivalent rebate for affordable housing, where you get a rebate of up to 50% of the increase in the municipal portion of property tax payments for a period of 10 years. And you provide a minimum of 6 residential units in a new apartment building of affordable rental units. And then that last one, the affordable housing accessibility co-application, is essentially a stacked program, if you will, where it's saying that you can jointly apply for the accessibility improvement incentive programs if you are also providing accessibility improvements alongside your affordable housing. So on that note, before we carry on to the next one, Andrew, what was your question?
Thank you. Sorry. Just wanted to ask 2 questions. One, the proposals, are they entirely from Dillon? This is a Dillon initiative? Like, this isn't in collaboration with town staff?
What do you mean?
When you're proposing the incentives for any of these items?
They were built off of the best practices study. So a lot of these we had seen in other municipalities, but the town had a say in what we had provided. Part of the background review was an interim report that essentially kind of summarized everything we had learned, which included that best practices review. So those preliminary recommendations had also already gone in front of council, and now it was just a matter of fine tuning it.
Perfect. You answered my second question as well. Thanks.
No worries. So now the last and only bit was facade improvement. This one had a specific area within the town-wide community improvement project area called the downtown district. So with that, we have 3 proposed incentive programs. one for front facade improvements, another for side or rear facade improvements, and then another stacked application type where if you provide facade improvements, you can also, and accessibility improvements, you can jointly apply for both. But I will quickly run through them. So for the front facade program, it's up to 50% of the cost of eligible front facade improvements, up to a maximum of $15,000 for a maximum of $7,500 in grant funding. And an additional $2,500 may be given to applications that would include the restoration of heritage features with approved materials and designs. For this to be applicable, you need to be zoned commercial and institutional, sorry. It needs to be located in the downtown district. You are restoring brickwork, wood, masonry, and metal cladding, or you are replacing or repairing architectural details, windows, doors, signage, exterior light fixtures, and other improvements as approved by the town. So for the side and rear facade improvement program, something similar as well, up to 50% of the cost of eligible side and or rear facade improvements, up to a maximum of $15,000 for a maximum of $7,500 in grant funding. So same thing as the last one, it needs to be zoned commercial or institutional, but the key piece is that your side and or rear yard or facade, sorry, is on the same side of the building's property line that abuts a public parking area or a public open space, essentially with the benefit of activating that space by fixing up the facade. Again, you are restoring brickwork, wood, masonry, and metal cladding, and or you are adding mural art or other methods of activating the spaces that's pre-approved by the town, or you are replacing or repairing architectural details, windows, doors, and other improvements that are pre-approved by the town. And finally, the last one, again, is that stacking program. So you get all of the benefits of the front facade improvement program if you are also providing accessibility features. So it will be up to 50% of the cost of eligible exterior accessibility improvements to your front facade to a maximum of $5,000, and or up to 50% of the cost of eligible interior accessibility improvements to a maximum of $5,000. As well as everything that we would offer for the front facade program. So again, you need to meet the criteria of both types of financial incentive programs, as well as the eligibility criteria for one or both of the following programs, being exterior accessibility improvements or interior accessibility improvements. So I'm about to move into the conceptual streetscape improvement plan. But before I do, does anybody have any questions on the other financial incentive programs we've just run through? See, Ian Parker has raised his hand.
Just out of curiosity, are these numbers and incentive programs developed between yourselves, Dillon, and the staff, and or has council been involved in their development?
They have, again, kind of the way I had responded to the last question, they are built off of existing CIPs, but the benefit of having this conversation today is if a number doesn't look right, we're open to that feedback. But again,
that's not my question. My question essentially is, was council involved in the development of this?
In the development of it, no, but they were a part of hearing the numbers firsthand.
All right, thank you.
So the community improvement plan, oh, Toby.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent, sorry. So as a councillor, I can say that our involvement in this was to earmark it. We were the ones that set this in motion, and I can't even remember how long ago it was, but it was this council's decision to actually go ahead and do these CIPs for the benefit of the community. So that's our, and seeing the numbers as you said, Amy, but for the most part, our involvement was to greenlight this so that we could get these CIPs made up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. To build on that, actually, that's the part of the point of this PIC as well, is so that we can get that initial feedback on it and we can further hone it in time for the final CIP. Just want to make sure there are no other questions before I move on. Okay, perfect. So the next piece is the Conceptual Streetscape Improvement Plan, which looked at streetscape improvements to improve the public right-of-way for the segment between Lake Avenue and the river along Bridge Street. And what we had learned through the first Public Information Center was that the boundary for this should be extended across the river towards Sinclair Square, as well as extend a bit towards the rail to trail just up Lake Avenue. So what we had heard through engagement is that there was a need for cycling infrastructure, particularly within the downtown area. There were hopes to add traffic calming measures on Bridge Street. We wanted to embrace sustainable practices through design. There was a need to implement 8 to 80 urban design principles, which essentially means that it should be designed to accommodate people of any ages, ages 8 to 80 essentially, but accommodating all ages. Adding accessibly designed public spaces and seating areas, converting on-street parking spaces into patios or public seating areas, often called parklets, and creating placemaking opportunities. So that includes gateways or enhanced signage treatments for entrances into the town, as well as providing wayfinding signage, including accessible signage at trailheads in Carleton Place. So you'll notice that a few of the bullet points are colored in blue, and those are the ones that are actually being tackled through the ongoing Bridge Street reconstruction project. So I'll quickly take the next few slides just to kind of explain how those apply here as well. So they are implementing public seating areas and landscaping along Bridge Street. In that first photo on the left, it's actually essentially having taken up parking space. So it acts to alter the perception of drivers as though the roadway has narrowed, so that acts as a traffic calming measure as well. They incorporated pedestrian scaled lighting, as well as textured pavers for crosswalks. Those as well are a form of a traffic measure because it's a visual contrast and helps to identify those crosswalks, in addition to the fact that they have flashing beacons, which are on this next slide. So on the right is the marked crosswalks with those rapid flashing lights that pedestrians can activate before they cross the street. And then on the left is the proposed gateway feature at the northwest corner of Lake Avenue and Bridge Street. And then the third and final slide of what the streetscape improvements are on Bridge Street is the provision of on-street parking, as well as landscaping buffers and street trees as part of those landscaping areas with seating. So with that in mind, in terms of what else we had heard through engagement, the Conceptual Streetscape Improvement Plan looked at adding directional signage for town destinations and attractions, providing parks and trails maps at trailheads, as well as trying to add in cycling infrastructure. So what we had proposed was a shared bike vehicle lane with a Sharrow roadway marking, or other forms of signage that indicates that it is a shared road. So in terms of wayfinding improvements, it was adding parks and trails maps and a directional signage totem. So the first location we had considered was near the bridge, just on the side of the Mississippi River, just to kind of connect to that Sinclair Square, but also connect to the other end of the downtown. And then the other area we had identified that would be a good spot for these is where the Ottawa Valley Rail Trail intersects with Lake Avenue. Before I go into the polling question, Mark Lovell, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, hello. I wonder if we could create sort of walking paths, kind of one kind of from downtown towards the river, and then maybe another one from downtown along Bridge Street and back along the rail trail, just kind of themed walking trails within the town to kind of give people a reason to follow the trail and walk around the town.
Like, are you thinking as part of a wayfinding strategy?
Yeah, so for example, develop a trail for the map that takes someone along along Bridge Street and then down maybe Lake and then down towards the river and then back towards downtown again. Another one that takes them from downtown along the rail trail and then back downtown again. Just various sort of create walking trails within the downtown to help people explore, maybe one over to the museum and back again, just to help people explore the downtown.
A lovely idea. There are opportunities to do things like wayfinding strategies, and as part of that, you could find even more locations for where these signs can go. It could become an explicit trail network, exactly like how you're describing it. It could be something that could be added to the municipal leadership strategy, but usually as part of the town's official plan, there are strategies for parks and open spaces as well. Although in terms of the placemaking aspect of it, it may not be directly tied to that. So it's that missing piece that could go into the municipal leadership strategy, yes.
So if I wanted to offer feedback to after this session, who would I forward that to? Oh, I see Andrew
Trying to help.
Hennon.
We're in the process of doing a transportation master plan. So if you did have comments you'd wanted council to hear or staff, we are going to be discussing it. I think it's end of August. It is our next meeting about the transportation master plan. So that would be a part of that.
Okay. So
reach out to Guy Bourgon at the town and see if you can engage him with some comments.
great. Could you put the name of Guy Bourgon in the chat perhaps so I don't
I'll try. I'm not very good with Zoom. I'll give it a shot. If otherwise, you can reach out to me or any staff. It's fine.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Right. So those were the two main areas that through our study, we had figured they could go in terms of those parks and trails map and a directional signage. But that leads us to our first polling question. So I'm going to get it up on the screen right now. So what I'm hoping to hear from you is whether we've missed any areas. So other than those two specific areas that we had identified, do you think there should be any other area that we can put them that would benefit from something like this? Would you pick area A? So that's north of Beckwith and west of Albert. Would you pick area B, north of Beckwith and east of Albert? Area C, which is south of Beckwith and west of College, or area D, which is south of Beckwith and east of College. So I have launched the poll. I'm going to leave it up for a few minutes just to see how things come in, and I'll keep an eye on it as we go. But we're looking forward to your feedback. So we're about a minute in, we have just under 40% participation. And for those who hadn't used Zoom polling before, there should be an option, a submit button at the end after you've made your selection, and that should launch your response. So I see that just under half of the folks who are online right now have responded. So I'll give it another 30 seconds and then I will close the poll. Another option as well is if you choose to not answer the poll through the actual poll, you're more than welcome to speak up and provide a bit more detail with where you would think it should go. Just over 55% participation. Give it a few more seconds. Responses are coming in, so I'm going to leave it open just a little longer. I also see that a few more has joined. So again, if you're new to Zoom polling, at the bottom of the poll that's launched, it should be on your screen. There should be a button where you click submit. All right. I'm going to close the poll, but of course, if anybody wants to speak to their response to this question, we encourage it. We encourage all kinds of feedback. So on that note, we'll go to the next slide. So the next piece of the conceptual streetscape improvement plan was cycling infrastructure. And again, in terms of adding things like cycling lanes on Bridge Street, that requires actual study to determine if it has capacity for something that's segregated or protected. So what we had proposed was essentially a shared bicycle vehicle lane where it's denoted with roadway markings and signage that it is a shared space between vehicles and cyclists. So we proposed two options for this. The first being a shared bicycle and vehicle lane on Bridge Street that would go from Lake Avenue to the Mississippi River. And the intention is that it would allow you to connect to the existing trails in the area and the parks. The difference is this is a higher speed street, or not higher speed, sorry, higher activity street, given that it is the main commercial area. So that's option A. Option B is instead of having it on Bridge Street, you have it on the quieter streets that parallel it. So one being on Beckwith Street, and then another on Victoria extending to Allen Street. So those are the two options that we have for that. So that comes to the second polling question, is essentially which option do you prefer? Do you prefer option A, which is having it along Bridge Street, or do you prefer option B, which is having it on Beckwith Street and Victoria/Allen Street? We're at 84% participation, so that's great. The responses have slowed down, but it's looking more like option B is the preferred option. So now I'm going to quickly talk about the, before I do, Mark, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you very much for catching that. I wonder about not even sort of directing people to the rail trail instead of having something sort of parked or highlighting on the streets, but just directing them to the rail trail to get over and back across the river instead of having it downtown at all.
That's always another option as well. Like instead, do you see my mouse?
I do, yes.
Is that what you're thinking? Instead of having it here or here, just having it connect to the rail trail?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
I
know it's a bit further out. I understand it's a bit further away from the downtown, but it would advertise that the usability of that trail and keep people away from the roads.
It's definitely an option. I wouldn't mind if the town could speak to whether or not it's a multi-use trail to begin with, because if it is, then I think the benefit of having it in the downtown is encouraging active transportation for things like accessing shops and revitalizing the downtown by having people be able to access elsewhere. But it is an option. At the very least, it could connect that way.
As long as we keep people off the sidewalks, I'll accept anything other than that. There's a lot of bicycles on sidewalks. Thank you very much.
It's definitely something we can look into and see if we can incorporate it into the final CIP.
Thank you.
I think we had another raised hand, but it might have been lowered because I don't see the notification anymore. Okay, so back to the municipal leadership strategy. So again, this is a strategy that involves town-led initiatives for public areas, streetscapes, to help revitalize them as well. And essentially, it's the municipality taking initiative and helping to improve Carleton Place alongside that of the private sector. So what we had come up with was informed by feedback from the public, stakeholders in the town, and the investment opportunities were prioritized based on public realm and connectivity, their ability and timeline to implement, the potential costs associated with implementing them, and the tangible benefits to the community. So we had 7 listed. So the first 4 are on the screen. I had chatted about a few of them already. So adding cycling infrastructure in the downtown district, which is what we had just taken that poll on. And we proposed that to be in the medium term. And then adding cycling infrastructure outside of the downtown would be long term. The third is adding traffic calming measures on Bridge Street in the downtown district within the project area. That has been identified as short term because that is already in effect with the Bridge Street reconstruction project. And then the fourth of converting on-street parking spaces to patios or public seating areas like parklets. That's in the medium term. That's mainly because as part of the Bridge Street reconstruction project, some on-street parking spaces were converted to allow for those landscaping areas. But the benefit of a parklet, for those who don't know what it is it takes an on-street parking space and converts it into a temporary public space. So temporary in the sense that it can be built and torn down pretty quickly. So the benefit of these is that they can be relocated as needed based on the demand, based on what kind of retail use is around there. For example, in the city of Vancouver, there's a cute little ice cream shop on West 4th, and right in front of it, they have a public parklet. But maybe one day that may change into something different, and then it wouldn't make sense to have a nice little spot for you to eat your ice cream. But that's just an example. But these are things that the municipality can do depending on the needs and wants of the public in terms of providing more public spaces. So then we go into adding gateway treatments, enhanced signage, and other forms of placemaking opportunities for entrances into the town. Again, this one was short term because an enhanced landscape feature was added to Lake Avenue as part of the Bridge Street reconstruction project, but this does not mean that there couldn't be more at other town entrances, like the highway and McNeely Avenue. The sixth option is creating high quality public spaces and green infrastructure that are accessible and allow for opportunities to rest. And then the seventh is adding wayfinding signage throughout the town, including accessible trailheads, accessible signage at trailheads in Carleton Place. So before I move on to the funding and implementation piece, I wonder if anybody believes that there should be more to that list or whether that list is conclusive. But if not, I will carry on. So there are many benefits to the community that comes with having this CIP, the potential for accessibility improvements to businesses and private homes, the chance to beautify your downtown and public spaces to enhance walkability, vibrancy, and business vitality, the provision of greater affordable housing options that allow you to age in place, and offering incentives to use empty spaces in the town. So with that in mind, what CIP focus area and its financial incentive programs do you think will have the greatest impact on your community and should be the main focus for the first year of the life of the CIP? I will launch the poll. So this poll is up on the screen. So the reason why we ask this question is, even though all of these are important priorities that we would like to see in the town, only so much can be done on a year-to-year basis, and only so much money can be put towards it. So at the end of the day, some priorities need to be made in that sense. So this will help us figure out what programs should be launched at the outset based on your input. So for those who answered, we're already at 100%. 75% participation. I'll leave it up for a bit. And while people are responding to this question, Oliver, I see what you wrote in the chat. You said people ride on the sidewalk because the cars pose a much larger risk to the cyclists than the cyclists pose to pedestrians. And that's a good point. The benefit of all of the additional traffic calming measures that are coming onto Bridge Street should make it an environment where it would be a safer experience to cycle on the road. But part of that comes with perception of safety. It comes with rider experience, and it takes time to get people to that point. And it's something that's seen in other areas as well. It seems to be a recurring theme, which is why usually the preferred option for most people is to have a segregated bike lane. But if that can't be provided, there are usually mitigation measures that could be implemented to help with that.
Amy, Lydia had her hand up a couple of times.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just my main interest is the cycling opportunities, to have a safe area, because honestly, it's not really safe when the cars and the cyclers are using the same road. So that's my main concern, is to have something for the cyclers so we can actually enjoy the downtown area too, rather than enjoying it either on the sidewalk and bump people off or get bumped on the street. It's either one.
No, I hear your concern. We'll definitely look into it when we structure the CIP.
Thank
For
you.
this poll, oh, you're welcome. So for this poll, we're at 80% participation. I'll just give it a few more seconds before I close it. Don't anticipate we'll get more responses. So the greatest response we had received was to prioritize affordable housing initiatives, followed by accessibility, and then downtown revitalization, and then lastly, brownfield redevelopment. Right. The next question is, what scales of projects should be prioritized within the first year of the CIP? Would you, so large scale projects, so those that may be valued at or greater than 100,000, medium scale projects, so those that may be valued at roughly 50,000, small scale projects, those that may be valued at approximately 20,000, or you don't know and you're not sure. So we're at 66% participation, and it's been up for a minute. I'll give it another minute. So we're still at 65% participation. We're just at about the 2-minute mark. I'll leave it up for a few more seconds, and then I can close the poll. Okay. I don't see anybody else responding, so that's okay. But from what I am seeing, there is a tie between not knowing and not being sure. Oh, spoke too soon. I got another response. We're at 70%. Mark.
Yeah, so my not knowing, I was one of the not knowing ones. I think that the value that we can get is not necessarily determined by the price. Like some really small parklet kind of projects could have a good impact to kind of beautify things. And I wouldn't want to discount them from being considered, whereas something larger may be long-term and onerous and heavy. So I'd like to give some agility to the decision makers other than just price.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
That's helpful. No, thank you. Thank you. That's great feedback. I will end this poll, but there is a tie other than there's a 3-way tie between large scale projects, medium scale projects, and don't know, not sure. So we're going into the last poll. Essentially, to support the public good, what level of investment in municipal tax dollars do you feel is appropriate to contribute to the CIP? Would you say funding of $60,000 from a 0.5% increase in municipal taxes? Would you say $120,000 of CIP initiatives from a 1% increase? $240,000 of initiatives from a 2% increase, or keeping taxes the same and adjusting another service that the town would provide? So we're at about 70% participation. We're at about the 1 minute mark. So I'll leave the poll open for another minute. We're at about 80% participation. We're just about at the 2 minute mark. So we're still at about 80% participation. I'll give it another few seconds before I close down the poll. Don't see any more responses, but there's some interesting results. We have a two-way tie between providing $120,000 of funding with a 1% increase, tied with providing $60,000 from a 0.5% increase. And then there was a tie between providing $240,000 with a 2% increase versus keeping taxes the same. So that was the last of the interactive session of the polling, but I'd like to open the floor to any other questions that you may have. The floor is open.
Amy, can you open the chats and maybe perhaps provide some comment on chat comments?
Sure. So we had a comment from Lydia that said fundraising to raise money in some areas. Not sure if that makes any sense. Lydia, are you able to elaborate on your question?
Yeah, like, well, I'm not sure if that helps or if I'm in the wrong ballpark or the right ballpark, I don't know. But if we're looking at, rather than bringing taxes up or, you know, we already pay, we're already taxed out as much as we can, and we pay everywhere where it's possible, and it's thinning us out. So by doing some fundraising for specific funds or areas, I think that if that's of any help, that would be probably a good idea to try and see, you know, if the community can do some kind of a fundraising and the funds go to those particular places where, you know, without trying to tax us, because we're already feeling the pinch as it is. So that's just an option. I don't know.
You're suggesting fundraising at a community level?
Why not? I mean, I don't know. Does it make sense? I don't know. I'm not good in these things, but I'm just thinking is if there needs to be somehow that the community pays for it. But we're already feeling the pinch as it is. Like everything is skyrocketing right now. And, you know, you got to cut ends here, cut ends there. But sometimes, you know, if people can give what they can at fundraisers, why not? If that's a give.
Ron, would you like to help respond?
Well, I think actually that's a good idea because when there's community buy-in and they're interested in helping to raise funds for specific projects within these broader public projects, particularly on the, say, on the public realm, because these incentives more pertain to the private property. It's really just as important to be investing in the public realm, and very often the municipalities take the lead on these streetscape programs in the public realm, but are always looking for partnering with civic groups and other groups that are willing to come together and make contributions into parks, into signage. You see that in neighborhoods, in communities of all sizes, not including yourselves, right? It's communities of 13,000, 20,000. It's very important. It's not just the larger municipalities. And I do think that the municipal councils are always trying to spend the money wisely. And if there's opportunity to do some fundraising within the community and partner with the municipality and the private sector, I think all these partners coming together is to the benefit of all. So there are many examples.
Yeah, and in terms of supplementing that funding, there are, and I think it was mentioned earlier, but there are funding opportunities from the provincial and federal governments as well. For example, there are opportunities of funding related to brownfield development at the provincial level. So that can always ease the financial burden associated with this. I see your hand raised, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, fundraising community-wise is a good plan. It takes a lot of coordination and a lot of work from it, and good things can come of it, as we've seen with Junction. We just got that big fundraising for the pad to go in there, so that's wonderful. Our staff, however, has been very proactive in looking for grant money, and been very successful the last several years. And that's kind of a good thing to do, because obviously it's free money for the town. Sometimes we do have to match some of it, but it certainly gets projects moving much faster and rapider. And normally you can get a larger project done. So I think it needs to be a combination of both, but the municipality, you know, we do have to take the lead in looking for grant money, whether it's through heritage or through recreation or housing or whatever it is. So I think a combination would work, but I think the bulk of it would have to be through grant money. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another comment that Mark had left with respect to showing the results of the polls. That was a tongue twister. Yes, short answer is yes, they will be released. However, what we will be doing is we will be posting the same polling questions online for those who couldn't attend this session in real time. So they won't come out right away, but what we will be providing is essentially what we heard, summarizing what we've heard tonight and what we'll hear from those who respond to the polls after they have the chance to watch the recording of this. So the results will come out at that point in time. And then you had another comment saying, what about creating a parklet on private property? I own some property and I would be very interested in the parklet idea. I'm not too sure about the logistics of that. Ron, do you know?
I think well, I can't want to speak for the municipality, but I would think that they want to maintain control of these kinds of facilities within the public right of way, as opposed to making one-off decisions on parklets on private property. So, but I think that's a good topic for discussion among staff and the Dillon team to get some ideas about this, both the pros and the cons. It's a good topic for discussion.
Most definitely. Yeah, Nikki.
Amy?
Yeah.
We did sort of do a little kind of parklet idea in the last couple of years with COVID, where the BIA sought out these kind of they're almost like a trailer, but they have built up sides and they have seating in them, some of them, and some of the businesses, we sourced them out and brought them in. I think we had 3 of them in different areas. And some of them had seating in, some of the businesses put shrubs and things in to beautify them. And I believe there were about 3. One was outside of Fresca. One was down the street near the Good Food Company. And I think there might have been one other one. And we brought them in over the summer months, kind of April till October timeframe. And that's what I'm kind of envisioning is kind of that little parklet idea sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And they can take all different shapes and forms, and they can be really I was going to say really well designed. It's not that they aren't well designed, but I'm saying that some are more minimalist than others. Some are fairly basic, where it is a designated area just for seating, and there are some shrubs and whatnot. But some even have like tables. For example, there's a little coffee shop on Wellington in Ottawa that has like an awning over top. It has seating. It's got very tiny tabletops. And at that point, those are, because they're outdoors, they're dog friendly. So people enjoy those for reasons other than grabbing the coffee at the local shop and just sitting outside. So it becomes a public space, even though it's meant to extend that business's realm, if you will. But they have proven to be very successful and quite popular. So, Diane, were those 3 widely used?
Yes, as far as I know, they were.
That's good.
Yeah, and they provided that separation between the traffic and the sidewalk, you know, and because they had the sides on them, I think, and because they were so close to the road, I think they almost were a bit of a traffic calming measure as well.
Exactly.
Because of their close proximity between the road and parking spaces.
Exactly. I know that when we were early in the pandemic and restaurants couldn't have in-dining seating, bylaws were created to allow them to essentially extend their patio into the street. It was a similar idea. Rather than making a parklet, though, they were able to provide tables and seating. So kind of similar to what Diane was just describing, having people kind of on that edge, obviously protected by a wall, a protective barrier, but drivers drive much more slowly. when they see that there are potential obstructions in their vision. So it does work.
And I guess it could be on the side streets as well.
Yeah, and you know what, on that note, even though the streetscape improvement area is predominantly Bridge Street, it does seep into all of these cross streets that meet with it. So activating the downtown does not limit to Bridge Street alone. So it could consider the properties that kind of feed off of it. Looking in the chat, I don't see any more questions. On that note, just wanted to give one last opportunity for anybody to speak more to the responses they had in the polls, or with respect to anything else that we've gone over tonight. And I would like to add that if you did have more feedback, the next slide, I'm just going to quickly run through the last couple slides, and then you'll see where I'm going with this. So our next steps are to incorporate the feedback that we heard from you today, the feedback that we'll hear through the online polling after it's launched online. We'll incorporate the feedback on the proposed financial incentive programs, the Streetscape Improvement Plan, and the Municipal Leadership Strategy into the CIP. So we will further refine and scope it. We'll hold a statutory public meeting to present the revised CIP to council. And then based on how that goes, hopefully have it adopted through an official plan amendment. So with that being said, and where I was going before, if you have any questions or comments that you would like to write down or provide after this call, we strongly encourage it. So the email address up above is where you can do it. So just to Nikki, so ndwyer, ndwyer at carletonplace.ca. Or you can go through the project website, carletonplace.ca/community-improvement-plan.php. And as I had mentioned, we're launching the same polling questions that we had put through in this PIC. So for those who couldn't attend but have the opportunity to watch this recording and respond to those questions, the deadline to provide your input is July 7th, after which, as I had explained, we'll prepare an engagement summary just to talk about what we had heard from this PIC and from those polls. So with that being said, I just wanted to thank all of you for joining today, and thank you so much for the feedback. It's really valuable to us, and we'll take it into consideration for sure. Have a few more comments, and good, perfect. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have any other questions. Pamela, I see your hands raised.